Tell you what, listen, you may think that like you got the one up on me, but I'm gonna have
What?
to cut it. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut. Listen. I'm too intoxicated to continue this conversation, Jelly. I'm sorry. So I'm
Hey,
gonna have to just cut out. Okay, we're just gonna you and I are gonna keep disagreeing and talking in circles. There's like nothing more that we can gain here, and frankly, I'm just like really bored. So
hey, man. No problem. Sock, go ahead. And let them know where they can find you. Oh, okay. Welcome everyone to For the Minions. Change up of plans once or twice here, but we are here ready to go, getting everything started. And we've got Sockcap here with us. Thank you for being here, Sockcap. Go ahead and give yourself an introduction, where people can find you, all that good stuff.
twitch.tv/sockcap. That's pretty much it. You can search me on YouTube at sockcap.
Sweet, perfect. Awesome. Well, guys, what we're going to do today, the agenda for today's show is going to be that we're going to talk about Paragon the Overprime, a little bit of Ethereal, and then we're going to close out with Predecessor, since I know that's probably where you and I are going to be able to talk the most about as the games that are most played by probably both of us. But I am the JellyKnees. I'm excited to be here. Welcome again to For the Minions, everyone. We were going to have Mangoose because I wasn't sure if Sockcap was going to be able to make it, but he was able to be here, so I'm glad about that. So Mangoose won't be on For the Minions. Sorry for the mix-up, guys, but we are good to go. So Sockcap, let's get started with everything to do with Paragon the Overprime that's changed this week. And the biggest thing really is that they added ARAM to the game, so that everyone's randomized hero. It's on its own map. It's its own queue, the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to see kind of what if you've been able to look at it, into it at all. If you've played it, that'd be great. That's great. But just kind of your thoughts on what you think adding an ARAM map can do, positive or negative, for a game like Paragon the Overprime.
No, I haven't gotten a chance to play it. I want to play it. I mean, I think that's a good thing, right? To have it's only for a week. So to have like extra mode for a week, I think is fine. I don't think there's really much more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think being able to have a for fun game mode in these games is huge, right? Yes, like for Predecessor, for instance, doesn't have a true ranked mode quite yet, but being able to have that actual casual mode that people can go in, it's not super serious, anything like that, is going to be a big thing for these games going forward. And I like to see that that's kind of getting started in Paragon the Overprime a little bit more. The other big change that they had was that they got rid of their starting items and went to more of like a summoner spell-esque kind of situation there. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that as well, of like, where do you think that that's beneficial in some aspects? Because is it detrimental in some aspects? Like, where do you think that that's good or bad for the game?
I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Like, I don't know. I think it's just like other MOBAs, I guess, having summoner spells. It just gives options. I don't know. I don't think it's like a bad thing or a good thing necessarily.
I think the biggest thing, right, is it's changing up completely kind of how the game is started out, because instead of having that starting item where you either have a blink, you have wards, or you have the Destroyer Stone with your smite, you're able now to have those just as native things in your summoner spells and can buy components off the bat. So it'll change up the early game, definitely, because it's going to switch up some of those styles and some of the things you can do, especially because you're effectively getting 2 actives, whereas before you were only getting the 1. So you're definitely changing up the game in those aspects.
What sums do they have?
So they've got, yeah, I mean, so they have Destroyer Stone, so it's just the smite that's normal. They've got 2 healing ones that allow you to either heal yourself or your team around you in AoE. They've got the blink, that's a summoner spell, and then they've got 1 or 2 more, I think, that are like applying shields or help more supports kind of do their stuff a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that necessarily changes up too many things, right? Like blink is always going to be like the biggest thing to play off of when it comes to summoner spells. So I mean, like a shield, heal, stuff like that, ignite, those definitely like help make things a little bit more different, but I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal. But I'm glad that they did it. I mean, I think that it's interesting. It's, I think, better than having those things on a starting item.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and kind of, so talk to us about like what your experience in Paragon the Overprime has been in general. Like, are you playing the game actively at all? Are you
no,
have you played it, touched it, and set it down for a specific reason, or just you prefer a different game over it? Like, kind of walk us through your experience in the game.
I haven't played it since I wanted to play it this patch because they've got ARAM, so I want to try that out.
Okay.
But other than that, I haven't played it since before Pred came out.
Oh wow, so it's been not even, you haven't touched really early access at all, basically, for
No.
Paragon the Overprime. Okay.
No.
And what's the big thing for you that is the reasoning for that you haven't really touched the game at all?
So they've made adjustments in things like teleporters,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are better than they were. From my understanding, it's like 8 minutes before they activate, and it's a 90-second cooldown rather than a 60-second cooldown from basically the start of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. I think Prime, correct me if I'm wrong, Prime still does damage to structures.
It does not anymore. So it deactivates towers now that they've changed that, and then it doesn't do any damage at all. So it's just meant to be basically a better way for you to push into the lanes and get things done, more so than it is to actually deal the damage itself. So it won't end games by any means by itself anymore.
Well, no. I know that they took it out to where it doesn't end games, but for a while they took out like damage to heroes, but it still did damage to like turrets.
Yeah. So that's completely removed. So, now it's just deactivating turrets around the map.
I would say that deactivating turrets is still like kind of not that great, unless you're going for like a early game objective, right? Like if they have a pre-prime objective, then something like that's fine. But having that tied in with prime is like kind of nasty.
Yeah. So. And let's like, so if they got rid of that entirely, that it's not objective, it's not affecting towers and stuff like that, what would you rather see in a orb prime buff coming out of the taking that?
I think just having like increased health on minions, like just buff minion waves, and then just having like a team-wide buff, just like Baron or like Prime or whatever. But I think that mainly the reasons why I haven't played that game is because of that, right? Because of the way Prime works, and then travel mode, and then the teleporters still being a thing in the game, even though they don't do cross map anymore, from my understanding, right? If you're like in dual lane, it will teleport you to the Prime pit.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in off lane, it will teleport you to the deer things area.
Yeah, Prime Spirit. Yeah.
So I mean, I think overall they made like better changes. This is still like not like where I would want it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know, I've been told by Creed, is like the person that keeps me informed the most about that game. I've been told that there's more of a laning phase now. I don't know, but it's just still not. I don't know. It still seems very, very action driven, right, and less like strategy. And I'm just not interested in that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And if there's one change that you'd want them to make, what would it be? Would it be the orb prime changes, or would it be getting rid of the portals?
Travel mode. I'd get rid of travel mode. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think I agree with you that I think they've been making positive changes in that direction to move away from the action oriented side. Because when they first came out, and even the early beta tests and all that kind of stuff, they were way more action oriented than they are today. So they're slowly trying to get more into the strategic side of things. But I'm be very curious to see in another year, another 6 months, if that continues that trend, or if they feel like they're at that baseline now, where they're going to now just focus on more of the quality of life improvements and things like that. Any kind of, go ahead.
I was just reading your chat. You mean some people aren't good enough to play a travel mode? That has nothing to do with that. It's so easy to play that game. You realize that, right? Spectre is like so easy to play Overprime. That's one of the big issues with that, is that like comparative to the travel, like the movement speed compared to the projectile speed, projectile speed is so fast, right? You might as well, like, when you're playing like a character like Decker, for example, right? Like that stun might as well be hit scan. It's ridiculously fast. So it's very easy to play that game. Very easy to play that game. That's the problem.
And I think things like travel mode, when you get to a higher competitive level, especially, travel mode gets more and more problematic because then you start the leapfrogging, then you start dealing with all of these other mechanics that can be done with travel mode that make the game almost unbearable when you're playing against somebody that can use those mechanics in a better way.
Watch out, commentator. It's not going to focus you. True. True. Sorry, I've had a little bit to drink, so I thought we were going to get spicy on this, Jelly.
We might. Who's to say?
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, we are welcome to move on past Paragon, the Overprime. Not much news from them this week other than the ARAM stuff that came out. But now let's talk a little bit about Ethereal Sockcap. I know in the past you played in some of the creator tests, like the early on, the last map, the less characters, the whole 9 yards, all of that kind of stuff. From that point to now, have you seen improvements that you like? Have you seen improvements you don't like, or things that you don't like, you don't think that are improved? Where are you kind of standing since those tests that you played in on Ethereal these days?
It's like very difficult for me to give a opinion on that because when I played last time I played, it was like unplayable. So I don't know. Like it was like I was getting like it was a PowerPoint. Like I know you worked for them, so I'm like not.
I don't anymore. So you don't.
I know. But like it was. Like I like Skifter, he's a nice guy, and I think that like the concept is interesting, but we're like years off of that game ever being anything. Like it's not at this point. I don't even know why it's like necessarily compared to Overprime or Pred. It's just not even close, in my opinion. In terms of like it needs to be like the concept is there, the idea is there, right, and that is. They're interesting, but it's not smooth at all. It's not smooth. It's not playable. I couldn't even stream it when I played it last time. And I know it's like more like a year ago. So I mean, I think that they need like 3 or 4 more years really before it's even a thing.
Yeah.
So you got like 8 characters?
10. So as of the last test, they had 10 characters. Yep.
Yeah. So like we need more of those, right? The map is huge. It's fucking gigantic, right? When I played it. So like that needs to be like, I think the environmental assets like make that game have a huge dip in performance. I don't know if they've fixed that, but when I played it, I would assume that was where I was taking like the major hit in performance because it's not like the assets aren't necessarily bad, the character models aren't necessarily bad, and the VFX weren't necessarily bad, but there's a ton of stuff going on in the environment, like waterfalls, there's like rocks falling from the sky, like in the distance. It's like a lot of that stuff I feel like probably hits performance pretty hard, and it's kind of just like, yeah, it looks nice, but like it's kind of fucking pointless. So
yeah, I mean, so definitely that stuff is eating at performance, and I agree with you that I think even going into the most recent test, that there's more things that can be done to optimize in their settings, that if I turn something off, it actually leads to a significant increase in performance by getting rid of a lot of that optional stuff. If I'm playing on the highest settings with a 4090, for instance, right? Sure, give me the rocks falling, give me the waterfalls where I can still play at a consistent frame rate, but I also get all the pretty stuff. But to make the game more playable for more systems, there definitely needs to be better options to limit how much of that stuff shows and how much of that stuff eats at your performance for sure. And there were a massive performance uplift between probably the last time you played the game and the most recent test in May, but there's still definitely a lot more work to go from there as well, right? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the fault showed us, right, that like I will die on this hill that Fault so far has been my favorite out of these games. Just in terms of core gameplay, it was my favorite. It was the best, right? But it doesn't matter because nobody wanted to play that fucking piece of shit because it just felt awful to play, right? It was rough. It looked bad. It felt bad to play. gameplay aside, right? In terms of like how you can manipulate waves and how the gameplay loop was and all that stuff. Nobody gave a shit about that stuff at all. So that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that Predecessor comes out and people like Predecessor a lot, even though I think that the gameplay loop is not necessarily as good as False was, right? So anyway, like Ethereal needs to get to the level of smoothness that Pred is. That's basically it. Like they have to get to that level, otherwise nobody's gonna give a shit about it. So.
Yeah, and I mean, so aside from like the performance aspects of that, what's the like thing you'd want to see out of Ethereal more than anything else?
Like animation reworks. I would like to see like better visual effects. I would like to see better. Did I say animations?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to see animations, visual effects. I would like to see better sound. I would like to see more of a condensed map, even if it is going to be a massive map with like 3 floating islands for lanes and a floating island for jungle. That's fine, but like make those a little bit more condensed, because what I was seeing was like each one of those maps was like as big as Pred's map. Pred's map's not that big, but it's big enough, right? You don't need one like lane that size, and I might be talking on my ass, but like, yeah, like I think maybe condense the map a little bit. I would say probably, as much as they want to go like crazy with shit, with like having more than 5 abilities and like a class ability, I think probably less actives, a few would be better. So,
and that's so something I talked about with them internally, and I've said this outside as well, is the game can be really complicated, right? The actual gameplay elements of it can be really complicated, but that means you need to simplify other areas as well to allow for that the complexity to shine, right? When everything's complex, it's just going to be overwhelming, and it's going to be too much for new players especially to pick up, let alone anybody else. Yeah. So you need to find a way to limit the amount of like ability choices people need to make, limit the amount of things like that, where you can simplify pretty easily without costing too much of the complexity at the same time, but it's less button presses or less actives, whatever it may be, right? You got to find a way to dumb that down so the rest of your gameplay can shine, because it's just too much in its current state.
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, if you have shit that's simple, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game is less complex, right? It's very hot in here, Cisco, so yeah, it does look shiny. Sorry. Yeah, no, there's plenty of games that are like, I would say that like a game like Counter-Strike, even though it's a different genre, is like a relatively simple game, right? There's not like, you know, you're either counter-terrorist or terrorist, one of you plants a bomb, one of you has to disarm it, or you all kill each other and you win, and then there's, you know, buying different guns, and those different guns have like different spreads, shit like that, right? Like, the game itself is not necessarily like overly complicated, but there's so much to it. Even though it's like simple, there's still so many layers to it of strategy that like the game is complex through that. But like somebody can like pick up the game and play it easily, right? Like somebody like, oh, you know, I buy a gun, there's not even like aiming down scopes, right? It's just like I just move my mouse and shoot, right? Like.
Yeah, the complexity's in more of the nuance elements rather than just at a surface level. You're like, wow, this is super complex, right?
And I think most games are like that. In terms, like, you look at most games that have taken off and done really well. Most games are pretty much that formula, right? Yeah, you look at like Dota 2 or Dota is very complex compared to League. League does, I would say, better than Dota in general, maybe by a little bit, right? Or, you know, I think it does a little bit better than Dota. And it's just like, it's a simplified version of Dota, essentially. It's all they did, right? Like it's still got a lot of complexity, but it's simple. So
yeah. And I mean, going back to what you said earlier too, I think one of the biggest things that hurts Ethereal is their animations and the lack of fluidity in between them. Right? Like that, if everything feels like it's slightly delayed, it's just janky. Every time you press a button, you don't always get the feeling across of what you're actually doing. and that hurts the gameplay because it feels like you're disconnected from your character, and it just pulls you out really easily. And I would love more than anything to see those animations improve. And I know that's something that they know needs to be worked on, right? But it's just for the sake of argument that has to be a top focus for them, to make sure that each of these characters are better and more fluid than the last, for sure. All right, well, let's move into probably the spicier topic, but for the two of us here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask so after that last podcast with Robbie, is there anything left for you to complain about?
Oh, there is plenty left to complain about.
Really?
Are you kidding me?
Really?
That podcast was a step in the right direction, but that podcast was definitively not the like end all be all of there's nothing to complain about anymore.
I thought you were gonna have to start making shit up.
What? Then you clearly don't know me, because I always am looking for the things that actually exist. I don't need to make stuff up to look into it further. But right. I mean, let's talk about that podcast a little bit and see. So if you guys don't know, the CEO of Omega Studios was on the Predcast this last week and was able to answer some questions about that they had for him. And I think the biggest thing is he provided a little bit more insight into a lot of the things they're working on. And again, I think that this podcast was a definitive step in the right direction, and I think it should be the new baseline for how information is given to the community in Predecessor. Full stop. And I would love to hear your thoughts about that, Sock.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say the question again. What was it? Sorry.
You're good. It wasn't necessarily a question, just kind of want to get your thoughts on this should be the new baseline for how information is given out. Because he did not give specifics into pretty much anything, right? And I don't think he always needs to give hardcore specifics, but he went into the details just enough that he actually answered questions the community had. He defined the area that the community needs to look into for what's coming, for the UI updates, for console, for Lizard, for skins, for all of these things. He put the community in a better box so that their speculation isn't running wild, that he actually gave nuanced answers to these things without giving specifics of console comes tomorrow. So I want to hear, like, what are your thoughts on that? Should he give more information? Should he give less information?
No, I think it was fine. I honestly think that I'm not trying to sound like a Omega dick rider or anything, okay, but I think that their level of communication has been fine in the past. I think that this was nice, and it is certainly, I think, addresses a lot of kind of complaints that people had. But yeah, I think that they've been fine. I'm a little bit of the camp of like, so there's some terminology that I think you use and other people use that's kind of irritating to me, where it's like very loaded, where it's like, I think last podcast you talked about the Greystone event, which was, yeah, like, it's shitty. Everybody knew it was shitty, but you said like, this is the most like divisive, or the most divided this community has ever been over an event. And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, it's like a free event for 2 icons. Like, it's not that big of a fucking deal. But like, I think that the communication has been like fine in the past. Like, I think people always talk about it like being slow. Like, I don't even see, like, League doesn't release like a hero every month. Like, sometimes they have like a
League's also completely creating original characters every single time.
Right, but it's also like an isometric top down from like 2009, 2010, something like that, right? Like, so like the models aren't necessarily that hard, right?
I would disagree with you entirely. Look into League's models and their current model creation and tell me they're not that hard, because they do full model creation.
You would make the argument that those models are harder to create than the models in Paragon? Is that the argument that you're trying to make?
No, but I am telling you that those models are more complicated than inserting a model from Paragon into Predecessor.
Yeah, maybe than inserting, but I'm just saying that there's also like a huge company with more than 100 employees, right? And they've been doing this for a long time. This is like this studio's first game. They've started out with a small group of employees. Now what Robbie said, they have over like 100. Like, I just think that there's differences there that I think are important, I guess is what I'm saying. So,
But the community doesn't care about that. Right?
I
The
don't
point.
give a shit if the community cares about it or not. I'm just saying that it's like the reality of it, and that's how it's gonna be.
No, the
Unfortunately,
reality of it is that the community doesn't care, right? That's the point. That is the reality. I mean, even Crashy was saying it last time that nobody cares that they're a small indie dev studio, right? Nobody cares about that. If they can't hold to their promises, if they can't actually do the things they say they're going to do, that's what people care about. So
Right,
for you to say that their communication in the past has been fine, I think doesn't make a ton of sense, because the fact that they're not hitting the deadlines that they're setting for themselves.
Yeah, I just also don't give a shit what the community thinks about the company. I'm just saying that when I look at the company, I don't expect them to just be spitting out content left and right. Like, I knew coming into this, okay, I'm gonna spend $60 because I want to support this company, and I know that they're not gonna really pump out that much content until maybe free to play, right? That's what I'm banking on. Once it goes free to play, and once they really feel that pressure of like, okay, it's free to play now and it's full release, and now we gotta actually fucking, pick ourselves up by the bootstraps, if you want to use that term, and pump some shit out. Like, until we get to that point, I don't really give a shit, to be honest. Like, what happens in the interim. I know that it's going to be slow paced at this point, and if it's slow paced, I would just say, like, go play something else. I think that's what everybody's doing, right? And I don't think they give a shit. I think to get to the point at this stage of the game, if you want a successful MOBA, if you want to compete with something like League or Dota, for one, I think that's kind of impossible. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But two, if you want to get to that point, if that's the end goal, then you need a ton of fucking financing, just investors' money to survive until you get to that amount of content in your game. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it, right? This is what happened with Fall, essentially, right? Like, I say, like, Fall didn't release as fast as Pred even did, but like, they weren't going to make it, right? They didn't have enough money, right? So I would say, like, the key difference between them and like Pred is that Pred actually has like investors. They've actually got some money behind them, right? So there's a potential for them to be able to stall out until they get that much content. So,
and I think the thing with the content is the problem was not necessarily the content release for Fault. I'm speaking about Fault specifically. Fault got to the point where they weren't releasing content, but they said they were going to over and over and over again. That we're working on something, it's going to come out soon, where it's going to be great, whatever. And then they delayed that. And we're seeing the same coming out of Omega, money or not. They've just delayed season 2 an extra month and their original hero, and they delayed most of the features in season 2 except for the UI, right? Like, how is that kind of stuff okay with you, despite them saying they're going to deliver on all of those things?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Do we think that that's like the kind of the same thing? Do you think that this situation is the same?
I can't say, but that's partly a communication problem, right?
Do you think,
when the
so,
communication is the same as we were seeing out of Fault, what is the community supposed to assume, right? The track record for Predecessor is going downhill. They are not meeting what they're saying they're going to meet on a consistent basis at this point. So the community's faith in them is going downhill. So when they start repeating beat for beat the way that things were going with Fault, if people were in the Fault community, what's to stop them from thinking the same thing is going to happen in Predecessor?
I mean, how many times have they delayed posts?
Every single. So it's been 2 seasons to be sure, but so far both seasons have had delays.
Okay, but delays about what? Like heroes? Because I think the last time, the last post that they made, or the last like kind of like blog that they made where they pushed back the original hero, is like the first time that they've pushed back a hero, right?
Push back a hero, sure.
Am I right about? Okay,
Yeah.
so I would make the argument that that's the only thing that like people necessarily really care about.
I disagree
Right.
with you.
You don't think that? Okay, you don't think that? Okay, let me ask then. What do you think people care about?
I think absolutely people care about heroes. I think saying that's the only thing they care about is not true. And that's
Okay,
the
but
part of
what?
the statement that I disagree with, because
What?
ranked
What is?
systems are a big thing that people wanted. The API, for better or for worse, was a big thing that people wanted out of season 1 that got delayed into season 2. Replays and spectator was a big thing that got delayed out of season 1 that went into season 2 that people definitely cared about. Right? These are the kinds of things that people are caring about that they keep on delaying and don't really provide explanations for, other than, yep, we're delaying it. Right? Like, and that's why I say that the communication up till Robbie's communication on the Predcast this week is subpar. Because Robbie actually, when they talked about why the UI was being delayed, why all of these other features, why the UI is taking precedence over other features, for instance, right? He actually gave information of why it mattered. And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that people necessarily care about that type of stuff as much as you're saying that they do. I think that like the thing that draws people into EA, or the thing that would draw the most people into the game at this point, would be heroes and the progression system. So like,
And they delayed the progression system.
sure, so you're right on that, and I would say that that's a bad thing, right? But other than that, I don't think that like pushing back an original hero is like the end all be all, right? That's kind of why I wanted to come on this podcast just in general, is that like I think that there's a lot of big deals that are made out of nothing. Every time I hear you talk about these games, it's like a lot of big deals. Like even when we're
how is not holding to what the expectation that you set for your community not a big deal? I'm saying that they have now consistently delayed content that they said was going to come out in a specific time frame. That, as a concept, is a big deal. That is a very bad thing to start creating as a track record for your company.
Okay, but I would say that like, just think about that for a second, right? If you delay a bunch of stuff, what happens? What happens? People leave, right?
In the context of what? People,
like
yeah, people stop playing
leave.
your game. People get frustrated. Right. People don't. The biggest problem with delaying content, people don't trust you to say that something will happen in a certain time frame.
Okay, like
losing trust is the biggest issue with consistent delays like this.
Okay, I don't think that it's necessarily consistent, but
how is it not consistent?
I think that's that. Well, for one, because like I only give a shit about like heroes, and like,
I thought you said that's the only thing people care about is the heroes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that's I don't give a shit about anything else. So like, they push back a few heroes, or they push back the original hero, right?
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it really matters. You
think that I'm only talking about heroes. They are delaying what they said was promised in the game. That is going to lose them the trust the community has in them to deliver on a product when they say they're going to. That is the problem.
Until what though? Until what? Until they add that shit into the game eventually, if they can last that long, right? And then those people just come back. Right, that's what I would assume anyway.
But this isn't about people playing the game or not playing the game. It's trust in the company, right? When League of Legends tells me that, hey, a new character is gonna drop next month, I have never once thought, yeah, well, maybe it won't drop next month because they're gonna delay it because they didn't actually know what time frame they were going on. When Predecessor tells me that they're gonna drop a new feature, that thought absolutely occurs. Of like, well, we'll see if it actually comes out in that time frame.
Okay. Let me look something up real quick because I'm curious. Okay, Riot has close to 5,000 employees. So that's why I would say that happens, right? Like, you've never had that experience with Riot because they're a massive company. I'm just saying, look, I'm not trying to, once again, I think Blood came in and gave a comment, and I've heard Ryan Red say this comment too, and people are going to say that I'm fucking dick riding once again, right? But I'm just going to say it right here because I agree with it, right? Is that you have to temper your expectations. I absolutely think that that's the way to go about it, right? This is their first game that they've ever made. It's an indie fucking studio, and they have a small amount of people. Well, they've had a small amount of people working on the game until recently. So yeah, like I don't expect much coming out of this company for a while, right? Until we've maybe got like 2 or 3 years under our belts. If we can last that long, if we can make it that long, then I'm ready to judge them a lot harder and be like, okay, you guys have had a lot more time a lot more experience doing this stuff, right? So at that point, I can be like, okay, you guys are dropping the fucking ball, or you're not, right? Or you're doing the right thing. But until then, like I don't. And once again, I don't really care about like EA too much. I care about like free to play marketing, right? When they go free to play and they do their marketing, then I'll give a shit what happens. But until then, like I know that they have enough money to subsist for a few years, right? So they're fine for a while. So we'll see what happens when they get to free to play, right? And marketing. When that shit happens and that flops, then I'll be right there with you, Jelly. I'll be right there with you being like, okay, they fucked this up, they fucked this up, they fucked this up. But until that happens, I don't really care.
But so the thing for me is not that I expect them to be perfect out the gate, right? Because that's not what it is. I expect them to improve as they go on. And so far, they've done nothing but do the opposite of that. Their timeframes are getting worse, not better. Right? Their delays are getting worse, not better. They've had 7 months into early access now, 2 seasons under their belt, supposed to finish this month, but it will now, season 2 will finish at the end of August, right? And those expectations that they're trying to set are getting worse. They're not improving at all in that regard, right? So, like that's the problem. Robbie even said it himself on the Predcast that effectively over the last 7 months, all they've really done is ship 7 characters.
Right.
Right? How is that an improvement over time? It's not.
And replay.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, it's not much, but I wasn't expecting much, and I don't think anybody really should have been expecting much. Like, I don't understand that kind of. I mean, I would say that, like, all right, maybe the way that I look at it, right? If we we're going to compare it to Overprime, right? You could ship a bunch of content out really fast, like rapid fire patches, right? We all remember that from Fault, right? Rapid fire patches, ship that shit out. But then you have the problem, I think, on the other hand, that OP has, where it's like they've had so many patches come out that have just been like really buggy, like historically just like super fucking buggy and rough, right? So I mean, like I don't know, man. Like they could ship out a lot of content, but if it's not like checked, if it's not quality assured, then I think it's gonna be an issue.
But again, that wasn't my point that I was just talking about. I want them to improve over time. In the last 7 months, they have not improved over time, right? That's the bigger concern to me, right? Content aside, yes, great, they're delaying content, but what that says to me is that they are not improving over time. That's where the bigger concern comes from, Sockap. That's where all the things that you're saying that I'm making a bigger deal than it should be is stemmed from. Is they are not making improvements over time. How over 7 months they're getting worse in their communication aside from Predcast. How over 7 months they're getting worse in terms of the expectations of delivering on content. It's not the content itself that's necessarily the problem. It's the delivery system. It's the lack of improvement on those 7 months. Great, you can say all you want that free to play is when we should start really judging them. But if they're not improving in early access, which is the point of early access, is the gradual improvement of their processes and their game, then how do we not care about that ahead of time?
Okay, so tell me, what are you like? What would make you happy with this game in EA? Like, in terms of like,
watching the studio improve over time.
Well, okay, but like, what's the metric that you're like? At what level are you satisfied? Like, give me like a actual like solidified answer. Like, you know, they could do this, and this, add these things, and I would be happy. Because I just think that you're just never happy about these things.
When they're not improving over time, you're right. I'm not happy about that.
I mean,
as no one should be. When the game is, when the company behind the game is getting worse in their communication, worse in their time frames, worse in their deliveries, that's a bad thing that people should be worried about. They shouldn't be happy about that.
Okay, but I distinctly remember, like, you and Viking Jedi, I don't mean to like drag them into this, but like you guys were mad about like the Fault like loot box thing, right? But it was like you earn them for free or you could buy them, but you could earn them for free, right?
Okay.
And all of the content was available for individual purchase. Nothing was locked behind loot boxes. So it's essentially like loot boxes existed, right? In that, but there was nothing incentivizing you to buy them at all, and you earn them for free through leveling up. Okay, what is not true about that?
The loot boxes were cheaper to buy than buying the content outright. So yes, while you can still buy the content outright, I can get the thing for cheaper, which incentivizes me to buy the loot boxes instead.
Okay, I would say that I'll give you that. You could buy the loot boxes for cheaper and gamble, or you could spend like an extra few dollars to buy the actual skin, right?
But where you think in human psychology that they're not going to want to try and get something for cheaper is ridiculous. That's the whole point of loot boxes.
That nobody's gonna buy those loot boxes because nothing is content gated behind that, right? So I'm just giving. I don't want to turn this into like a debate about that. I'm just giving that as an example of like that's like a non-issue.
I disagree with you entirely. That is absolutely an issue. Why are loot boxes being removed from other games then? Right? Overwatch, I could earn loot boxes for free. I never had to buy them. All the content was behind the loot box. I could earn it for free. Why did they get rid of loot boxes in the second game?
I have no fucking idea. I didn't play that game.
Well, but that's literally the example, Sockcat.
Wait. Was there shit content locked behind it?
Behind the loot boxes? No, it was all of the content was behind the loot boxes. So you can you can get every piece of content from the loot boxes you can earn for free by playing the game.
Do they have loot boxes in Overprime?
In Overprime? No, not at all.
They don't have any?
No.
Okay. I'm surprised. Anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to like hijack it. What's up, Soul Reaper? Right. I didn't mean to hijack it. But
the point is, they are not improving over time. That's the biggest concern. That's where the community should be concerned, is the lack of improvement over time. Tell me how they are improving the game over time as a whole. I have said consistently that patch over patch has improved the game. I will give them that absolutely. Whether it's a 1% improvement or a 20% improvement, patch over patch has improved the game itself. But their communication is getting worse, not better. Aside from Predcast this week.
So you think that this is getting worse?
It is getting worse. It's not that I think, it is actively getting worse. They delayed almost every feature in season 2, whereas in season 1 they only delayed 3 or 4 features. Right? So that is a measurable worsening of feature delivery.
I'm sorry. You're gonna have to I've got too much shit. My wife came in here and I've got DMs. What was that? Sorry.
I said so between season 1 and season 2. Season 1, they only delayed, I think it was 3 or 4 things from the feature list from season 1 into season 2. Season 2, they've delayed almost the entirety of the list into season 3 or beyond. We don't actually know that it's going to come in season 3 either.
So that's for the UI, right?
They're doing only the UI in season 2. Every other feature's been pushed other than heroes.
Okay.
Right? And they were releasing 3 skins a patch. Now they're releasing 1 skin. And I'm not even talking about the skin pricing aspect of that. Right? So that is a worsening of the delivery of content. The features, they've delayed more features in season 2 than they delayed in season 1. That is a worsening of the delivery of content. That is a bad thing. That is where the concern comes from. It's the actual reversal of improvement. They're getting worse in what they're doing than getting better. That's where the concern comes from.
I mean, maybe we wait for the UI to come out and see what happens after that if it continues to be slow. I don't know, man. Like I don't know what to tell you. I think that it's, once again, I think we just like fundamentally disagree. Like they've pushed back.
You can't tell me how you shouldn't be worried about that.
I'm not.
But why? Why?
I'm not worried because it's EA.
What does that have to do with anything?
What do you mean? What does that have to do with anything?
EA is intended for them to refine their systems and get better at the delivery of their promises, their time frames, all of that kind of stuff. They're doing the exact opposite of that.
Are you saying that they're not adding and improving to the game? Is that what you're saying?
I guess I've answered this, but the patch over patch, the game itself has improved. Absolutely. But this is not just about the game, the gameplay itself, right? The balance patches have been an improvement. I've said that time and again. Okay, but this is
Sure.
also about their systems of delivering new content and making promises to the community, and those getting better as well. And those are getting worse as
Okay,
everything else is supposedly getting better.
Right.
So
Right.
at
And I
best, they're
understand.
at a neutral state. If I really wanted to call those negated out.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying that, like, let's pretend, or let's extend an olive branch. Let's say that the UI is actually like a big issue, right? And they need to fix that instead of what Robbie said, right? They're releasing for PS4, PS5, and the 2 fucking Xboxes. I don't give a shit about Xbox, so I don't even know what they're called. But let's say they're releasing for all that shit, and they have to get the UI like congruent between all 5 platforms. Like, that's kind of a big deal. We can say that, right?
That they
Is
said
that
they're
okay?
outsourcing to a third-party company. But yes.
The UI, they're outsourcing that
No,
to a
the
third-party company?
development of console. They're outsourcing to a third-party company.
Okay, but the UI, are they outsourcing that to a third-party
No,
company?
they said that they are working on the UI themselves.
Okay, so let's say that that's like a big deal between all 5 fucking like platforms, right? I would say that's a big deal, right?
I
Because-
disagree with you because the UI is basically the same on all those platforms. The difference that's going to change is going to be the buttons that display. But the UI itself is not going to fundamentally change platform to platform.
But you don't think that, let's say Xbox has requirements for UI that maybe PlayStation doesn't have, right? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily like a big fucking deal, right? It should be probably pretty easy to make a spreadsheet or whatever, a fucking chart, and just be like, okay, Xbox wants like this shit and this shit and this shit, and PlayStation wants this shit and this shit and this shit, and like our users on Steam and like the live service all want this shit, right? So let's try to make something that complies with all of these things, right? That should be like fairly easy, right? To do that type of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Right? We agree with that?
That should be fairly easy, yes.
That shit should be like fairly easy to do all that stuff, right? To comply with all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now I feel like I made a point for you, and I
You
forgot
did.
what I was gonna say. I forgot what I was gonna say. But listen. There was a point to that shit, right? There's a point to that shit.
Yeah, you started
I've
out by saying that is really complicated, and now you've come around to say that that's really
Okay,
easy.
All right. Well, I won't go back to that's very complicated, but I would say that, like, I don't think that that's necessarily like the I don't think it's necessarily like the hardest part about all that stuff, but I would say that getting that right, and then having to change all of that stuff and make sure that that's right and congruent between like all different platforms, so then you can push out content and not have to change it every single time for different fucking systems. Does that make sense?
Well, so it should be consistent across all the systems, which is what I told you. That you are designing with all of that in mind so that it's the same across the board, because they're not designing new UIs for each and every console. The thing that's mainly going to change is going to be the buttons.
Wait a minute, Epic did 90% of the work. Stacks, you're on drugs. That's not true.
I don't know that 90% of the work is true.
No, that's just not true. Anyway, I'm sorry. Well, okay, so what were we talking about?
Tell me
Before-
why the game not improving over time is a good thing, or I should be okay with that.
I think that it is improving, right? I've talked to you about, or that's what okay, all right. Let's get back on track, okay? And I'll try to focus really hard, Jelly, okay, for you. All right, buddy. I'm doing this for you. I think that they are improving slowly over time, right?
Where?
In content being released, and heroes.
Nope. But that's not true. They're not improving in content being released.
I guess
so-
they haven't added any heroes.
That's not an improvement. They've added the same amount every single month. So that
Okay,
is
so
not an
that's-
improvement. That is a
That's not an
stagnation.
improvement. That's a stagnation. Adding stuff to the game is a stagnation.
Adding one hero a month is the same thing. It is a one every single month. That is not improvement. I want improvement. Show me where
So
they
you-
are improving.
So you want like exponential hero releases, like
No.
we're talking
I'm
about, like,
not talking
3
about just hero
weeks, then
releases.
2 weeks,
But
then
but
1 week,
saying
then
no,
4
that's not what I'm
days.
saying.
Okay,
You're
what do you
saying
say?
that the hero a month is improvement. That's not true. They are not
I think that it
improving their
is.
content pipeline by doing one hero each month.
I think it is because they're having one additional hero in the game.
So
as time
we can
goes
say
on.
that the gameplay is improving from an additional character, sure, but that is not them improving their content pipeline.
Okay, so like replay system, adding stuff like that, right? Like that doesn't matter. Like that's not an improvement to the game, or like what?
That's absolutely an improvement. But when you're promising 20 features and you deliver 17, then you promise 20 features and you're going to deliver 5, that's not an improvement. I gave you that specifically of between season 1 and season 2, they delayed 4 things in season 1, and now they've delayed half to 3/4 of the list in season 2. That is not an improvement.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm like played Fall. I don't know. I don't expect like any of these developers to ever hit their mark ever, because this is the first
That's a
game
bad
that they've
thing.
ever made.
Why? How can you say that and say that's not a bad thing?
Because I like understand that there's a growing period, that there's a learning period, right?
Then
Like
so where are they growing? If this is a growing period, where are they growing?
Bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Dude, Ethereal's been in development for like 4 fucking years when you were working with it, and it still has 8 heroes. That shit
Okay.
came out like there's 8 heroes shown off like year fucking 1, and then 3 years later we've still got 8 heroes. Like I don't understand. What are we comparing this to? Like the
Itself?
shit they're adding.
I'm not sure why you're attacking Ethereal when I'm asking you a question about Predecessor. Let's try and stay on topic here.
Okay, bro, I'm just saying that like 1 hero a month is like not bad. Once again,
but I'm not saying it is bad. Again, I'm talking about the whole. No, I am not. Well, you're on crack, dude.
No, you're saying it's bad. You're saying that they are just doing a piss poor job.
I did not say that. That's for sure. Okay. I said that they are at a stagnation point with 1 hero a month. That is doing consistently 1 hero a month is not improving your content pipeline delivery. That is what I told you.
Okay, let's look up like when the Heroes in League were released. How about that? Let's
what?
Should we do that?
How about you stay in the game we're actually talking about, Sockcap? Actually answer the questions that I'm asking you.
Okay, all right. So you think that 1 hero a month is a stagnation period?
In terms of your content delivery system, they are doing the same thing consistently. That is not improvement. That is stagnation. When I'm putting a 1 in a column once a month, they are doing it consistently. That's great that they're doing that consistently. When everything else is suffering on the side, that's bad.
Okay. I would say that, like, let's say you're making like a steady profit, right, in a company, right? You're making a certain amount of profit that stays the same from month to month to month.
So you flatlined, which is a bad thing.
Would that, okay, so you would consider that stagnation.
Flatlining is bad. You want your charts to go up and to the right, up and to the right.
You are going up and to the right because you're making profit every month. It's a steady profit.
That's not up and to the right. If your profit's the same every month, that is the same. That's not up and to the right. That is a flat chart.
Okay, maybe I'm retarded. I don't know. But so I'm just saying that, like, if you are consistently adding stuff to the game, I think this is like the position that I've maintained like the whole time, is that like if you are trying to compete with like League or Dota, right, you have to have enough money to get you there, right? So you have to like consistently release stuff and get to that point to where you have that like huge pool of heroes, that huge amount of content, right? But you have to survive until you get to that point, which is, I think, like, hopefully Omega can do. I don't think, I'm gonna be honest, and I've said this before, I think that all 3 of these games will fail. That's what I think. Okay, I do not think that they will survive in the long term. I just don't think it's possible.
For what reasons? Why? So what?
I think it's too hard to survive that long to get that content out. But I will say, I don't expect them. I don't have unrealistic expectations of them. Like, oh, you need to spit out, like, you need to just diarrhea heroes out, okay, and content out, right? If you're telling me that a company like Riot that has 5,000 employees and an isometric top-down MOBA, right, was like 2010, 2009, and they release a hero a month, and you're telling me that a fucking company with 100 employees is releasing a hero a month and going even with them, right? Even though Riot doesn't consistently release a hero a month every month, I'd say that's pretty damn good. That's what I would say. I'd say that's pretty damn good. So but I'm just saying that they need to have enough funding to survive until we get to that point, right? I don't know very much about investors, but I would say, once again, the same thing that happened with Fault. The lower the player base gets, yeah, that's pretty shitty for us, right? But for them, it's not necessarily a bad thing because they don't have to fucking pay very much money for servers. Their biggest expense is going to be the amount of employees that they have, right? At least what I know, right? So if they can deal with that and continue to pump out content and continue to subsist or survive off of the small player base that we have here now, then maybe we'll be okay. Maybe when it hits console, maybe that will be enough of a player boost to where we'll be okay. But I just, like I said, I don't give a shit until it gets out to EA and they do free to play and a marketing push, and then we'll see where it's at that point.
So why? Okay. The point that I was making is that they are not improving their delivery systems over time. That's where this started before that you went for the last couple minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Right? No, you're fine. But that's where it was coming from, right? They're not improving their content delivery over time. 1 hero a month is not an improvement on your content delivery. So delaying your features is a worsening of your content delivery. And if it's the hero a month that is making that worse, that they're putting more focus on keeping the hero a month than on the other stuff, then that's a bad thing, right? Because you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a sense. And sure, there's an amount that having more employees can help that a little bit, right? But if you're not solving those problems, if you're not improving in early access, which is when you should be making those improvements to your back-end internal systems, right? And it's actively getting worse on the community side of things, which should be the last place that it's getting worse, because if it's getting worse internally, but it looks fine to the community side of things, then you have a little bit of leeway there. Right? When it gets that your worsening of your content delivery systems show to the community, that's a bad thing that I think people should be worried about.
Okay, so when the UI comes out for this game, right? The UI update comes out for this game. Let's pretend for a second that the UI comes out for this game and that speeds things up, right? Okay. What then will you complain about? That's what I want to know.
I mean, that's an impossible metric to give you, right? That when this thing happens eventually in the future, what is there going to be left to complain about? You're giving me a hypothetical, right?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's a little personal attack. I'm sorry. That's it was not in good faith. But I just say, why don't we just wait?
We have been waiting. So at what point have we waited too long?
Until the UI comes out.
So when the UI comes out, then I'm allowed to start complaining?
I mean, you didn't wait for that, but yeah.
No, but that's what I'm asking you. What is this metric that you're trying to establish here of waiting? So you said wait for the UI. Great. So if I wait for the UI, then what?
Yeah. Wait for the UI, and then okay. If it continues to get worse, then sure. Why don't you just keep complaining about it? I personally won't care because it's just like.
Well, no, you clearly do care.
I don't. Well, no, I do care because I think that you're like disingenuous with this type of stuff.
How so?
So, well, bro, for like the last, you're a weasel, man. Like the last 3 or 4 years, all you do is complain about these games: Predecessor, Fault, OP, and then you just suck off Ethereal. That's it. Like that's all it is. That's all it's been. Every time I've ever listened to any content that you've been a part of, it's just like super critical about Fault, Predecessor, OP. Even last podcast, you guys were talking, and you don't even work for them anymore. And I watched that video that you posted on your YouTube where you're talking about like, oh, I'm going to be a lot more critical about Ethereal and all that stuff. And then all you guys talked about was like, oh, Ethereal is so wildly different that like it has the best chance, and that was it. Like that was the only thing that was touched about that. And then you spent 20 minutes talking about like 2 free profile icons for a free event in Predecessor, and how it was just so divisive and so bad. And I mean, like, I agree with you. Like, that's
So if you agree with me, then how am I a weasel for talking about it?
No.
If you're going to attack my character and call me a weasel, then you have to give explanation for it.
Okay, I will. So I would say that I agree in the sense that like it wasn't a good event, but it's a free event. Nobody gives a shit. It's for 2 free profiles.
I would say that saying nobody gives a shit is incorrect, because there are plenty of other cases outside of me talking about it that plenty of the other community have talked about it. So that is just not true from a wider community standpoint.
The 10 people on Reddit. Yeah. Okay. Those guys that complained about on Reddit, but nobody gives a fuck about those guys on Reddit. Okay. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, those guys give a shit about it. But like really, at the end all be all, like, it's a free event, right? Like, yeah, I saw it and I was like, I'm not going to be doing that because that sounds kind of loaded, right? But like at the end of the day, I'm not really losing anything. There's like other shit too, like in that the end of that podcast, or the last podcast that you did that like really irked me, right? And I'll say this as another example of you being a weasel. You said like, I have like 200 hours in this game. Okay, and what have I gotten out of it? What have I gotten out of it is the what you used, right? And it's like, dude, okay, how much did you pay? $60 for it?
I think I paid 40 because I did the $80 pack, but it was half price. So
okay, yeah, let's bring out the calculator here real quick. It's like I think it's just like it's just super entitled when I hear this type of stuff, right? So you paid 40, so let's divide that by 200. So, okay, what you got out of this game was entertainment. 20 cents an hour per the hour for entertainment is what you got out of this game. I would say if you compare that to like going to a movie, going out to eat with friends, that's a pretty fucking good deal, right? So that's what I would say. So like I think that like there's just this entitlement there. It's just like really ridiculous where it's like what do I get out of like paying $40 and getting 200 hours of entertainment out of this game? That's what you get. You get 20 cents an hour of entertainment, right? What's the point? The point is the entitlement. The point is that I don't think in the terms of like EA, I don't think that anybody is owed anything, right? You're paying to play the game early. It's going to be rough early on, but if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't, right?
So is it entitled of me to want the company to improve over time?
No, I don't think that it is, but I think that you're being unreasonable.
How? In what way?
That you're asking too much.
How am I asking too much? I am asking them to hold to what they say they're going to do. That's me asking too much.
Okay, I would say that when it comes to a company that has never made a game before, that is just starting, right? And they started small with what was it? Smokey, Robbie, and then Fringe early on for like the first 2 years. Then yeah, like I would say that it's been growing, and I personally see a positive trend where the game has continuously gotten better and better and better. Right, over time.
In a pure gameplay fashion, I agree with you. I've said that many times.
Gameplay and content in the game.
But that we have a direct metric to track that's not true.
Huh?
We have a direct metric to track that is not true. That they are not improving on their content delivery in their game.
No, I don't think so.
What do you mean you don't think so? Again, it's not even an opinion of mine. Direct tracking of what they've been doing shows that they are not improving in that regard. Has nothing to do with my thoughts. It is a blatant fact. They were releasing 3 skins a patch. They're down to 1 skin a patch. How is that an improvement?
I don't care about skins.
No. Answer the question. How is that an improvement? That is a direct fact that it has happened. That is not an opinion.
Right. That's
not an improvement. Great. So they're not improving in content delivery.
I don't give a shit about that.
Their season 1, they delayed 3 things, and season 2 they've delayed 10 things. I don't know the actual numbers, but for reference, it was an increase from season 1 to what they delayed to season 2. How is that an improvement?
Well, it's not. No, it's not improving.
So how can you say that they are improving in their content delivery?
Because I don't give a shit.
So they're not. So it's not that they are improving, it's just that you don't care.
Yeah. No, I think that.
So then, so who's being disingenuous?
No. Okay, listen. The stuff that they're not improving in is not. It's not stuff that's important, right? That's what we said before.
Again,
right?
the community has clearly disagreed with you outside of my own medium.
I don't think so. I think they care about a progression system, and a characters. So, I think that's what they care about.
But you don't know that. So
you think that? I think that I do know that because that was like the number one complaint about Fault, right? Was that like no content, and I would say that
no content. No, not no progression, content. No content. That was the complaint. Okay. This is content that they are delaying more this time than they did last time. So, and you just admitted that that is not an improvement. So they are not delivering in their content delivery.
So what was the content that people were complaining about not having in Fault?
I mean, everything. Fault was bare bones. Originally, it was the UI was bad, so they didn't add that for 9 months, if I remember correctly. Right?
They had UI, right? So I'm talking about like at the end of the game, people were still complaining no content.
Okay. Right, at the end of the game, when they've added a lot of these other systems. Yes, the heroes was a big one. Replay system was a big one. Absolutely. Ways of progression for themselves was a big one, right? Especially
Fault. They had progression in Fall, so they weren't complaining about that.
I disagree with you. Progression being what? That when you leveled up, you got a 500 matter boost? That's not progression.
You got currency. You got like loot boxes, stuff like that.
That's not progression.
How's that not progression?
Getting a loot box is supposed to be progression now? That's what we're supposed to call progression?
No. I'm saying like your account levels up and you get something. How is that not progression?
You got a loot box. That could be for anything. I don't have control over that. I don't have anything like that. That's not progression.
So what is progression?
If a loot box is going to give me 3 skins instead of a new hero, that's not progression. Right? Like that's
what?
Yeah,
you're not saying that that's not getting free shit for playing the game is not progression of your account, right? Or like what? I'm sorry, I'm a little drunk, so it's kind of hard for me to follow, but that sounds like what you were saying. Is that not the case?
If I'm getting a loot box and that loot box is giving me skins and I'm not getting a hero that I want to unlock, how is that supposed to feel like progression?
So you're getting skins from leveling up
instead of a hero,
right? Or
because heroes were locked behind loot boxes too.
What do you mean, like instead of? What do you mean instead of a hero? You get a hero too. Like what? I don't understand that.
No, the system, the loot box system in Fault specifically, was not that you are guaranteed heroes if you don't have heroes. It was that you have a higher likelihood of getting heroes.
You're not sure, but you could still get shards for heroes, and if you got 3 shards, I think it was 3 shards for heroes, you could unlock that hero for free. Like I don't understand. Once again, this is like entitlement to me. It's just like you get shit for free for playing the game. Like you play the game, you can get shit for free. I think, unironically, Clorox in your chat, I think, did the math, and it was something like, Clorox, you're in here, right? What was the hours? I think you did the math, the hours that it took to unlock everything in Fault. And it was something like 2 months of playtime to unlock everything, which was like really wasn't that bad, right?
All right. So, I mean, I will
just from playing for free.
I will looking at chat. I don't see loot boxes getting as progression personally, but I am clearly in the minority for chat, so I will say that I'm in the wrong here. And okay, so sure. So getting a loot box is progression, fine. But what does that have to do with Predecessor improving?
Well, no. The whole point was like, what is it that people complain about at the end of Fault, the reason why like it failed, and like what.
But Predecessor's not at the end, is not at the same point that Fault was at.
No, I know, but they complained about Fault for not having content, and the no content that they had in Fault, or the issues that they had in Fault, or the no content. What are the similarities between that and Pred? And the similarities aren't there. Where you're getting a hero per month, right? That was the big issue. No content, right? No heroes, that type of stuff. We're very quickly closing the gap in terms of how many heroes OP has and how many heroes Fault had, right? And Pred. So we're closing the gap there. We don't have a progression system, so that's a big thing that people complain about. And
Mastery
I think Rob even,
is another one.
Right. Well, I would say that that's a progression system, right? Of some sort.
Okay, sure.
Right. So and Robbie touched up on that. He said that they were concerned, and the feedback has been super good, and they probably could have spent more time on those types of systems, progression, that type of stuff, than they did, which they really haven't done anything about. So, but like heroes, I think that we're good on items, right? I think that like they are steadily, maybe not as fast as you would like, but steadily they are adding enough stuff to the game to get it to a point where it will be in a good spot, I think, right?
But I think you're focusing too much on what they're not adding things as fast as I want them to. Again, I said earlier that my focus is more on I want them to see them actively improve over time. What we have seen is not that. It's not a matter of I want them to release 10 things today and then 20 things tomorrow. It's I want them to improve over time. And I've said again and again that the gameplay side, the patches, the balance patches have improved the gameplay by varying amounts, but consistently over time.
Okay. And given Robbie's response and what they were focusing on EA, would you say that then that's tracking what they said? Because they said that they were focused on core gameplay. So if you think that the core gameplay has improved over time, and that they're focusing on core gameplay, and once again that's improved over time, would you say that they've met their mark then?
In specifically the gameplay sector, yes, I would say that they have shown improvement over time. I think yes, I'll stick to that.
Okay.
That I think they have shown improvement over time.
So it's the other areas of the game,
their content delivery,
right? That Robbie said that they specifically weren't focused on is the issue. Then.
But specifically not focused on does not mean actively going to get worse.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, you're focusing on one thing. Other things other than that could potentially get worse. I'm not trying to like give them a pass.
No, you have actively given them a pass.
Even though it has seemed that, sure. Okay, maybe I am trying to give them a pass on that, but I'm just saying that like at the end of the day, once again, I just don't give a shit. Like it's EA. It's gonna be slow until it's free to play, and if they don't pick the speed up when it's free to play and the game's full release, then we'll have some serious fucking problems. But
why are you okay waiting till then? Why wouldn't you want them to improve now? Why are you just okay with them not improving in early access, which is where they're supposed to improve, and then waiting for them to have? You just said otherwise. You said that they're improving in gameplay. You said that it is not an improvement, that they're not improving on how many skins they're releasing, that they're not improving in the content that they're delivering on each season. You said that.
I said that because, look, I think we can draw a distinction here, right? That like my personal preference of where the game's at, my personal enjoyment of the game, and my personal opinion on the game is different than the vast majority of people, right? So I would say that like, yes, right now on EA, it's fine. I think it's fine, right? Because it's EA and they're releasing stuff at a steady pace. When the game goes free to play, though, it's a little less about what the fuck I think about the game and a little bit more about the majority, right? So if it's not up to par with the majority of people, which I don't think that the majority of people have like a huge issue with it, but I'd say it's like maybe like half and half, right? Like half and half. There's definitely been a decrease of players as the game has been released. And it's gone down a good bit, right? Like a significant amount. But once it goes free to play, once they do a marketing push, like that's it, right? Like that's
They should have the improvements in place before then. Yes. When you're starting to spend money on bringing new players in, when you're actively spending money on bringing new players in, why are you waiting till then to improve on your delivery systems?
Okay, but what I'm saying is that, like, is that imminent? Are we getting to that point right now? Is that happening right now? No, it's not. I can tell you right now, it's not. I'm not even waiting for the answer. It's not. We're not at that point right now. We're not at free-to-play EA right now. It's not happening right now.
You're right. No, absolutely. We're not there. No, I'm agreeing with you that we are not there.
Okay, so they've got time. They've got time until we get to that point. And then they can, once they get closer to free-to-play and early access ending, then yes, they should fucking really pick up the pace, I think, so that people are impressed and people don't fucking leave, right? But until then, I think we're fine. Like, I think we're cruising along. We've got cruise control on. We're at a steady like 55 going down the highway, right? And it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. You might be the person behind us going like 70 that's like, get the fuck out of the way, you know, and you go around us. But like, we're just cruising and we're fine, okay?
But we're not. But the point is that we're not cruising.
You don't think so? I think we're cruising.
How is delaying content cruising?
I don't think. I don't know, man. I think we're just gonna go in circles at this point. Yeah,
well, because you won't address this point. How is you've said that they are not improving actively?
Okay, we push back the. Okay, but I have addressed this point. I've said that like the only thing that people give a shit about is the progression system and heroes. They've pushed back.
But that is not true. That is absolutely not true. You just said a second ago that you have a vastly different opinion than the majority of the community. So you may think that progression system and heroes are the two biggest things, but the community may not agree with that. I certainly don't agree that those are the two things that matter most. Right, them improving over time is what matters. Them improving over time is what matters.
Them improving over time matters the most. I don't know, bro. I'm just saying. Listen, they pushed back Lizardman and then or whatever the fuck he's called, right? And they're giving us TB, right? I'm pretty sure, right? We all think that's happening.
I think that's the community sentiment. Yes.
This month. Yeah. So like. Yeah, you push back something, but you get another thing. So, like, who gives a fucking shit, bro? Like,
They pushed back a dozen plus features and did not offer something in return.
All right. I'm gonna tell you what. Listen, you may think that like you got the one up on me, but I'm gonna have to cut it. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut. Listen. I'm too intoxicated to continue this conversation, Jelly. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna have to just cut out. Okay, you and I are gonna keep disagreeing and talking in circles. There's like nothing more that we can gain here, and frankly, I'm just like really bored. So
hey man, no problem. Sock, go ahead and let them know where they can find you. Oh, okay. Bye. All right then, chat. Let me fix this real quick. All right, guys, we got this fixed up now. All right, but chat, I guess I want to hear you guys. I want to talk to you more. I realize that I've been focusing more on Sawcap, talking to him, but I want to talk to you guys while you're here about delaying features, right? About delaying features. And what I said to Sock, and you guys, I know most of you heard this for sure, is I want to see them improve consistently over time. If that's one hero and one feature a month, and that's what they say they're going to do, then the next time they do one hero, by putting out a roadmap, you are telling your community that, right? If it wasn't a promise, why are they saying they're delaying them, right? Like I disagree that calling them promises is a bad thing. If they say that they're going to put out one hero a month and they're going to put out the replay system just as a feature to put out there, right? And then the next month they say that, great, we're going to be able to put two content features out, and in addition to our 1 hero month. That's good. That's an improvement over time, right? When you're saying you're going to put out 25 things and then cut back down to 5, that's a bad feeling. That's a bad thing when you're delaying content consistently, because you're trying to build trust in your community, and you're not doing that. Fox, exactly. Call it what you want. They delayed the content, and that's what happened. Promises, goals, whatever. Delaying content is what I've said is the problem. That it's showing a worsening of their content delivery systems over time. And that's the biggest thing. Please roadmap on screen. Okay, give me one moment and we can get that pulled up for you. Era roadmap. Okay. All right, sorry, chat. Name an EA game that hits every goal. I'm not saying delays are okay. In moderation. Let me add that to that statement, right? Because I know I'm gonna hear people say that I just said, oh, let's see the best way to do this. I got kicked out because I was in a voice chat by myself. Let's see if there's a way to do this well. Planning on doing that in a separate video. I will do that, but not in this format. I want to keep this to the conversation we've been having. But so the roadmap that's here, guys, we can pull it up. We can talk about the content that's been delayed and have a direct conversation about it in this. So I will mark off the things that they've delivered this month so far. Okay, so phase, they delivered. The mid laner was Morgesh, they delivered. New offlaner, they delivered. This has been pushed to August, but they will theoretically deliver it. As for the planned feature systems, competitive nights, I'll count as delivered, even though they've been effectively discontinued, it seems like. Replay system was from season 1. Public API was from season 1. Tutorial V1 was from season 1. Revamped loading screen, they did do that. Dynamic ping improvements, they did not do. In fact, has been delayed. Ranked mode has been delayed. Hero acquisition, they said was coming with the UI. We'll have to wait and see, but that's what Robbie said on the Predcast. Was hero acquisition. New cosmetic types have not shown up yet. New improved UI is still theoretically coming. The scoreboard rework might come. Scoreboard rework might come. The ability description improvements, as far as I'm aware, have not been delivered and are not coming this season, but that may be a UI thing. Bans and swaps and draft, they did not do. Oh, I did that with cosmetic types as well. Controller V2 has not been done. Improved store has not been done. More skins and profile icons, I'll cross them off. And then gameplay tweaks and features, I'll cross them off. So out of the things that were delayed out of season 1, so far, when we're in the last month of what was supposed to be the end of season 2, we've gotten one thing and then skins and gameplay tweaks. But everything else has been delayed indefinitely or not delivered this season yet. We're in the last season. That's a problem, right? How somebody can say the little asterisk, this list shows an intent. Some features may not make it in the during the season. That's fine. Again, some delays in moderation are okay. This is not moderation, right? When you're looking at all of this list and saying that that's okay, that they've delayed most of the features, that I truly can't say that that's okay, right? Like just because they put a disclaimer at the bottom doesn't make it okay, right? If I put a disclaimer on the bottom right of the FTM, if I put a disclaimer on the bottom right of FTM saying that you guys are not allowed to get mad because the takes are my opinions, are you guys not going to get mad in chat? Right? Like that's not going to happen. Season 2 is not done yet though. Absolutely. I said that. Like they've got 2 months technically now because of the delay. But they've said that season 2 is focusing on the UI. right? So the UI changes that are in here, even if I cross off UI changes, fine. New improved UI, news cosmetic types is not it. Assuming Robbie was accurate, saying hero acquisition's coming with the UI, hero acquisition is there. Scoreboard rework, I have a hard time knowing what this is talking about. Is this the post-game scoreboard? Is this the in-game scoreboard? Robbie gave conflicting messages about what scoreboard was getting updated to me. So I'll half cross it off, I guess. Ability description improvements, I don't know what that means. So I can't say that that's part of the UI or not part of the UI, right? Bans and swaps and draft, it's been delayed out of season 2. Controller v2, they said they're working on, but probably delayed out of season 2. Improved store. This is generic enough. I don't know if that's store out of game or store in game part of the UI, right? So again, your worries are warranted, but Ometa has over communicated the reasons as to why. They have not over communicated. Predcast was the first time we've actually gotten legitimate answers to why things were delayed, more than just they were delayed. You name a company that has the perfect communication you seek for. Again, perfect is not what I'm asking for, Empty. Improvement over time is what I'm asking for. I said at the very beginning of this, when we talked about Predecessor, that Ometa, that level of communication should be the baseline going forward. And I stand by that. I think that that's absolutely the case, that should be the baseline of communication standards for them going into the future. But guys, I am going to wrap it up here. We're approaching a little over an hour and a half, right? I love to continue this discussion with you guys. We are welcome to do so on the FTM Discord. You're welcome to DM me directly if you want to have these conversations. You're welcome to comment on the video when it goes live on YouTube, probably either tomorrow or Tuesday. But we are absolutely going to continue this conversation going forward, because it's definitely something that there is no singular opinion that is right more than the others necessarily, but I wish for constant improvement from them. And I don't think that that's true. You mentioned how communication is severely lacking. Your communication standards from what other indie studio are you looking for? I've not today said that their communication is severely lacking. Before the Predcast, their communication was lacking. Absolutely. Because they did not actually give information of why things were being delayed. The UI being a requirement of Sony and Xbox to be done is a lot more emphasis on why it needs to be brought up and why it needs to be focused on. Then the UI is an essential part of being on console. That doesn't tell us that they're the one, that Sony and Microsoft are the ones that are dictating what is needed. That tells us that they think it's an essential component of the UI on console, they being Ometa in this case. So them changing it absolutely is a bigger and better version of communication, and it should be the baseline going forward. So I love you all very much, but we can continue this. Like I said, FTM Discord, link down below, or on the YouTube video, or again, DM me directly. We can have these conversations. I implore you guys to continue having these conversations with me, because it will make this show better, and it will make it will make my opinion more inclusive, because I'll understand what the other side is thinking or talking about, or the opinions are. So like I said, please guys, don't be afraid not to message me. I'm happy to continue these conversations, but I will see you guys next time, and I wish you all the best.